I wasn't looking for anything important, that's probably where I found it. It was hidden beneath a stack of things I hadn't touched in years, covered in a thin layer of dust that made it look older than it was. At first, I almost ignored it. It was just another notebook, plain cover, worn edges, nothing that suggested deserves a second glance. Still, something made me open it. The first page was empty. The second page was empty too. For a moment, I wondered if I'd picked up the wrong notebook. Then I turned another page and found a single sentence written in the center. You won't remember today, but one day you'll miss it. I stared at those words much longer than I expected. The strange part wasn't the sentence itself. It was the feeling that came with it. It felt familiar, as if I had written it for a version of myself that didn't exist yet. I kept reading. The pages weren't organized. There were no dates, no titles, just fragments of thoughts scattered between blank spaces, almost like someone had been trying to capture ideas before they disappear. One page simply said, "Nothing changes all at once. It changes quietly until one day it has already changed." Another read, "The day that seem identical are secretly building your future." I couldn't remember reading any of it. Maybe I had, or maybe I hadn't. Either way, every page felt strangely personal. The more I read, the quieter everything around me became. I realized how much of life is spent waiting for obvious moments. We expect transformation to announce itself. We imagine there will be music, a dramatic conversation, a perfect opportunity. Ideas that visited for a few seconds before I reached for my phone. Dreams that quietly left because I kept telling myself there would always be another day. Maybe memories don't disappear because they are small. Maybe they disappear because we never really lived them in the first place. That thought stayed with me. I opened the notebook again. Near the middle, there was a page with only one question. When did you become so busy that you stopped noticing your own life? I didn't have an answer. Somewhere along the way, productivity has replaced curiosity. Every day became a checklist. Finish this, reply to that, plan tomorrow, repeat. Days become weeks, weeks become months. Then suddenly another year had passed. Not because time had accelerated, because attention had disappeared. A clear beginning. Instead, life usually changes while we are distracted. It changes during ordinary mornings, while making coffee, while cleaning a room, while deciding if start something or leave it for tomorrow. The biggest turning points rarely feel important when they are happening. That's why it makes them invisible. I closed the notebook for a minute and looked around. Nothing had changed. The same room, the same walls, the same afternoon light falling through the window. Yet everything felt different simply because I was paying attention. It made me wonder how many moments I already forgotten. Entire afternoons that disappeared because I assumed they weren't important. Ideas that visited for a few seconds before I reached for my phone. I think that's the real cost of living too fast. It's not exhaustion. It's forgetting that life is happening while we are making plans for later. The notebook never offered solutions. It never told me to quit everything. It never promised happiness. It simply kept asking better questions. Questions that refused to leave my mind. What would today look like if I knew I'd remember it forever? What conversation would I have with myself? What fears would suddenly seem smaller? What excuses would lose their power? Sometimes we don't need better answers, we need better questions. As the pages became fewer, the handwriting changed. It looked slower, more patient, almost calmer. One sentence stopped me completely. You spend your whole life trying to arrive somewhere, without realizing you are already somewhere. I read it again and again. How much of life is spent believing happiness exists one achievement away, one purchase away, one promotion away, one milestone away. The destination keeps moving. Every time we reach it, another one appears in the distance. It's like chasing the horizon. Beautiful, impossible, endless. Maybe that's why satisfaction feels temporary. We train ourselves to celebrate for 5 minutes before creating another finish line. I don't think ambition is the problem. Dreams aren't the problem either. The problem begins when today becomes nothing more than a bridge to tomorrow. Because eventually tomorrow becomes yesterday and suddenly we're wondering where all the years went. The notebook had only one written page left. I expected another quote, another question. Instead, there was nothing, just blank paper waiting for ink. For the first time, I understood why. No notebook can finish someone else's story. No quote can replace experience. No sentence can make choices on our behalf. At some point, every page has to become our own. I picked up the pen. For several minutes, I couldn't think of anything worth writing. Not because there wasn't enough to say, because I wanted the first sentence to matter. Then I realized something. Maybe that had always been the problem. Waiting for perfect words, perfect timing, perfect confidence, perfect certainty. Life doesn't begin when everything is perfect. It begins the moment we stop waiting for perfection. So I wrote the simplest sentence I could think of. Today I finally noticed today. Nothing extraordinary happens after that. The room didn't change. The world didn't suddenly make more sense. There wasn't a dramatic ending, just silence. Peaceful silence. The kind that only appears when the mind finally stops, racing toward somewhere else. I closed the notebook and placed it back on the shelf. Not because I was finished with it, because I no longer needed it to remind me of what had already taught me. Since then, I still make plans. I still have goals. I still dream about the future. But I no longer treat the present like a waiting room. I've started paying attention to the little things again. The light that changed throughout the afternoon. The sound of rain against the window. The feeling of finishing a long day. The quiet moments that never ask to be remembered, but somehow become unforgettable anyway. Maybe life was never hiding from me. Maybe it was patiently waiting for me to slow down enough to see it. And perhaps that's the strangest discovery of all. Sometimes it's the ordinary life that has been sitting quietly in front of us the entire time, waiting for us to finally notice that it was extraordinary all along. For a long time I thought the notebook had given me everything it could. Day passed, then weeks. Life slowly returned to its familiar rhythm. There were still deadlines, still plans, still ordinary mornings that looked almost identical to the ones before them. The difference wasn't the world around me, it was the way I moved through it. Without realizing it, I had started asking myself a single question at the end of every day. What did I notice today? Not what I accomplished, not what I bought, not how productive I had been, just what I noticed. Some days the answer was almost nothing. Other days I filled an entire page. I noticed how different the sky looked every evening. Even when I was convinced it was always the same. I noticed the silence isn't empty. It has its own kind of sound. If you stay with it long enough. I noticed that ideas usually arrive when I'm not chasing them. And I noticed something else that surprised me more than anything. The notebook had never been about remembering the past. It had been teaching me how to experience the present. One afternoon, the curiosity led me back to the shelf. The notebook was exactly where I had left it. I smiled as I opened it, expecting to read the same words that had changed me weeks before. Instead, I barely looked at them. Not because they had become less meaningful, because I no longer needed to search those pages for answers. They had already done their job. For the first time, the empty page at the end seemed far more interesting than everything written before it. So I picked up the pen again. This time the words came easily. I didn't write about dreams. I didn't write about success. I didn't write about changing my life. I wrote about the ordinary Tuesday that had quietly become unforgettable simply because I had paid attention to it. About the light that crossed the floor before disappearing, about the breeze that carried the smell of the rain through an open window, about the strange comfort of realizing that not every meaningful day has to become a memory everyone else talks about. Some moments only need to matter to the person living them. As I reached the bottom of the page, I realized something that made me stop reading. The notebook had changed. Not physically, its pages were still the same. Its cover was still worn, but it no longer felt like something I had found. It felt like something I was continuing. Maybe that's what every story really is. Someone begins it, someone else continues it. Sometimes those two people are different versions of ourselves. I closed the notebook one last time, not with the feeling that something was ending, but with the quiet certainty that something had finally begun. Since then, I never searched for another hidden notebook. I don't think I need one. Now I know where to look. In ordinary mornings, in quiet afternoons, in moments that feel too small to remember, because those are the places where life has always been written its best chapters. And every now and then, when a day feels like it's passing too quickly, I imagine opening that first page again. You won't remember today, but one day you'll miss it. Those words no longer feel like a warning, they feel like a choice. A reminder that every day offers two possibilities: to pass through it without seeing it, or to truly live it while it's here. I still don't know why I found that notebook. Maybe it had been waiting for me. Maybe I had finally become the person who was ready to read it. In the end, I don't think the answer matters. What matters is this: somewhere another blank page is waiting. Not inside an old notebook, inside tomorrow. And for the first time in a very long while, I'm not afraid of what I will write there.